Until you know why you want to buy property, everything else is irrelevant. If you invest in property back home, currency devaluation can wipe out all your gains. So people talk about, oh, I bought this house in Lekki 15 years ago. Now it's this million naira. Yes, but if you converted the value of the property to pounds, have you actually seen an increase? So this is the scenario where property as an investment trumps stocks. But that's only when you are not using your own money. Hello everyone, my name is Modupe and today we'll be talking about property. The average person in the UK has about 40% of their net worth tied in the house that they live in. So property is a big deal here. People will tell you when it comes to properties, location. And then some people will tell you it's about time and patience. Before we start talking about all that, we need to answer one question first. The most important question when it comes to whether you should buy property or not. And that question is why? Why do you want to buy property in the UK? Why do you want to buy property anywhere? Until you know why you want to buy property, everything else is irrelevant. Quick reminder, everything we cover is for information and education only. It's not financial advice. If you do need personalized financial advice, you should consult a licensed professional. There are two main reasons people buy property, whether in the UK or outside the UK. One, most people see property as an investment, and they won't be wrong. And then the second reason is people want a home. They're buying their own form of security as a home, a place to live in, a place to raise children in, a place that landlord come and chase you. The problem is people conflate those reasons. While property can serve as both, you should know your own reason for buying it because sometimes it doesn't. And the criteria for both are different. So if your primary reason is that you want a place that will serve as your home, you can't look at it strictly through the lens of an investment. Because most times, the kind of property you would want to buy to live in will not meet the investment criteria of someone that is looking at property as an investment. If you're looking at property as an investment, your objectives will be you want something that will grow, that the value or the price will grow over time. And if you want to maximize that, your location will be different from someone that is looking at it as a place to live in. Because the places in the UK, in Nigeria, where property has a long-term value might not be the places you are comfortable living in today. Let me give you an example. Back in Nigeria, over 10 years ago, I had the opportunity to buy property near the second toll gate. And I was like, I could either buy it to live in or buy it as an investment. And I said no. I said no because I couldn't live there. I knew I couldn't live in that place. And I started to do all sorts of permutations in my head that maybe I'll buy it, I'll rent it out. I could maybe stay there occasionally because it was just a one-bedroom apartment just after the second toll gate. I knew I couldn't live in a one-bedroom apartment because I needed more space, but that was what I could afford in that location. And then two, I knew it would take me longer to get to work from that place than where I was living at the time. But then again, it was the location I could afford. Fast forward 10 years into the future, it's a lot more expensive to get property there. You can't even find the kind of property that I found then in that location. So it would have made a very good investment, but I couldn't live there at the time. And even now, I wouldn't be comfortable living there in a one-bedroom apartment in the middle of nowhere. So it's the same thing here. If you are buying property for capital growth, then you want something that will grow over time. You might want something that you can get rental income from. If you are living in the apartment, even if you rent out one of your rooms, not everybody is cut out to live with strangers. Not everybody likes that kind of lifestyle. So if you're trying to double it as, oh, it's an investment, but it's also my home, but then you have a stranger living there that is paying you rent. Some people do it, a lot of people do it in the UK, but you need to decide if it's for you. And then it's also a way to diversify away from stocks. Now, on that point of diversifying away from stocks, that's where opportunity cost comes in. So if I were to invest in property today, I would probably need to liquidate my shares. And it's shares that has grown over time. But because I don't have that much cash sitting around, it's either I take emergency funds or I start to build up savings over time, or I take the shares that I've invested over the last couple of years, liquidate that and use that as down payment for the house, which for some people is the way to go. But the question you need to ask yourself is, which do I personally prefer? Or beyond that, which one has over time shown more tendency for growth? Because if I were to buy property today, I would be looking at somewhere in London to stay in. But if I wanted to buy it as an investment, I can't buy it within London because London prices haven't even caught up with inflation. If you look at average inflation of 4%, if you look at London property prices since 2020, they've barely moved. If you look at average price of property in London, it has barely increased in the last 5 years. So if I were investing in property in London, London would be a bad place to invest. But if I wanted a place to live in, London is a perfect place to live in. So that's another thing to consider. Now, if you're looking for a place to live in, you have to remember, like we said, there's the opportunity cost of this money. I could have stuck it in the stock market. In the last 5 years, stock market has grown average 10% every year. London prices have stayed flat. But if you're looking for a place to stay, then you need to see it as an expense, right? Which is not a bad thing. You just need to know exactly what you're doing. This is a purchase. It's not an investment. Your criteria for a house purchase is different. You're looking for a place that you can stay long enough, right? Not somewhere that within a couple of years you would have either outgrown it. Somewhere you don't mind staying, raising kids in. You won't have to rent for another, unless you live UK or you live London or wherever that town is. You'll be happy when you go home, right? It doesn't have anything that annoys you. Like every time you're there, you see that thing, it just annoys you. No, nothing like that. It's a place you can really stay. The returns will not matter too much because it's like I tell people, when you buy a car, you're not looking at the fact that the value of the car drops by 50% once you drive it off the lot. That's not your point. You're buying it because you know you are going to enjoy driving this car around. You are going to enjoy the utility of the car. It's just like when you buy food. When people say things like, when you are paying rent, you are paying your landlord's mortgage. When you are buying food, you are paying the storekeeper's mortgage as well. It's not only through paying for rent that you are paying someone's mortgage. Based off that reasoning, all of us should have our own farm. We should all be self-sufficient. Go and start your own farm. Start fishing. Because if you buy fish, if you buy sardine, you are paying the fisherman's mortgage. That idea of saying everybody must buy their own house and pay their own mortgage so that they don't pay someone else's mortgage doesn't really hold water when you think about it deeply, because it applies to everything, not just housing. Rent is an expense. Just like buying your own home is an expense. If you buy your home to stay in, you're buying a purchase. You don't say, oh, I'm not going to buy a car because I'm going to build my own car from scratch so that I don't pay the car dealer's mortgage. It doesn't hold water. Once you've addressed this question of why, the next thing to answer is where. Where do you want to have this property? Because whether as an investment or as a purchase, your location still matters. This is where that question of location is, because you have to look at the fact that if it's an investment, like I said before, London is not the best place to buy property for investment purposes because the price doesn't go up that much. It costs you more to buy. The capital gains are not as great as places outside London, and even the yields are lower because the price is so high. So even when you rent it out, and it seems like rent is expensive, when you compare how much the landlords are actually paying as mortgage to how much they actually rent places, it's not a great investment. So if you're looking at property for investment purposes, I would suggest you explore either outskirts of London or outside London. The other thing to also consider when you look at where is if you are actually buying it as a purchase and not an investment, where do you plan to raise a family or retire? Depending on what your long-term plans are. Because now you're looking at what do I really need in a house? So if you're looking at things like school runs, let's say you have kids or you plan to have kids, you have to consider that. You have to consider the neighborhood. There's a website that I use when I'm exploring neighborhoods. It's called crystalroof.co.uk. So it tells you everything that you need to know about a particular neighborhood. Just type in the postcode and you get all the details. Lovely website. But those are some of the things you would look at if you were buying it as a purchase. And then the other question that you need to answer is, where do you see yourself long term? Because property is very long term. And While there is no legal restriction on liquidating, it's not as easy to move around. First of all, you can't move it around, and two, it's not as easy to liquidate as other assets. So if you see yourself here in the UK for another 10 years, lovely to get property. But even if you see yourself in the UK, do you see yourself in London for another 10 years? Do you see yourself in Kent for another 10 years? In Scotland, wherever you are, do you see yourself in that area where you want to buy property for another decade? Because those are some of the things you look at if you're looking at it as a place to live in. If you're looking at it as an investment, then maybe you can look at it for another 5 years, because within 5 years, you should be able to make your money back. Either you flip it or you rent it. The other question is now, if you don't see yourself in that location, do you see yourself being back home in your home country? If your home country is your long-term destination, then is it possible, just as a consideration, to explore opportunities to buy property there instead? If you're looking for property to live in, if it is a place to live in, a place to grow old in, a place to settle down in, do you want to explore your home country? It's something to consider. Now, one major advantage of using property as an investment is when you compare it to stocks. Property is the one investment that you can borrow money to invest in. You can borrow money to start a business, fine, but it's actually a lot easier to borrow money to buy property. Not a lot of banks or lenders will borrow you money to buy shares. They would rather invest that money in the shares themselves. But you can have a down payment of £20,000, borrow £180,000 from a bank and invest in property. And the good thing is, even though the growth may not match stocks all the time, you're getting a lot more growth for your actual investment. Because if you look at this example, let's say you want to buy a property of 200k and you have a down payment of 10%, 20k. So you put down 20k, the lender gives you 180k, you bought the property of 200k, right? You've only invested 20k. If the value of that property goes up by 10%, that's an extra 20k. When you compare your returns on that investment to what you put in, you've gained 100%, because you put in 20k, you gain 20k. You only still owe the bank the 200k plus interest. That's all you owe the bank. You don't owe them the 20k that you gained. So if we go back to what I said earlier, that London doesn't give you a lot of rates, or property may not match stocks, even if property is only giving you 5% year on year, all right? So in that scenario that we just did, if the value of the property only goes up by, say, 5% and the stock market has gone up by 10%, if I put 20k in stocks and stock market goes up by 10%, I get 2k. If I put 20k in property and property goes up by 5%, right? It's 5% of the value of the property, not the value of my investment. So it's 5% of 200k, which is 10k. So what I get when you compare it with what I put in, I'm getting a lot more with property. So this is the scenario where property as an investment trumps stocks. But that's only when you're not using your own money. That's when you're using leverage, right? If you're using your own cash, this scenario doesn't hold. You have to do a like-for-like comparison. Another benefit of investing in property is people see it as a tangible asset, because when they talk about stocks, for a lot of people, they see it as paper. Stocks are actually described as paper assets because they're so easy to buy and sell. You don't see the company somewhere in the US, you're here in the UK, you've never been to their office. Some of the companies are actually software companies. They don't have physical, tangible offices. So it feels very flimsy. But property, you can touch the house. Even if you are still paying for it, at least you know this is a physical house, which is another reason why banks are usually eager to borrow you money, because they know if you don't pay for it, they can always take a physical property away from you. But it might not be easy to take stocks away from you, because the value of the stocks go up, could go down. So that's the other thing about it. If you can buy in a place in a good location, it also has a huge opportunity to give you a lot more rental income, a lot more passive income. I'm careful to call it passive, because when I actually explored this, and it's one of the reasons why, despite all these pros, I personally don't go into properties, because it's a lot more effort than you would put into something like stocks. It requires maintenance, it requires you handling things like taxes, maintaining the property, making sure the tenants are okay, making sure you don't run afoul of all the rules. The rules just changed recently for tenancy laws, tracts, and things like that. So it's a lot more effort intensive. It requires a bit more effort than investing in shares. So that's, for me, is the number one con of investing in property. And if you are renting it out, it's not all the time you always have your tenant in. Sometimes the tenants will leave. Sometimes you might have a lousy tenant that will damage things. Sometimes the property will just go through wear and tear. My shares don't have wear and tear. I can leave my shares there for 100 years. It will not wear and tear. I don't need to maintain it. But property needs maintenance. So it's not just buy it and forget it. You can't set and forget property. You have to keep maintaining it. So you have to budget maintenance, budget management. The reality of it is a bit more intensive than people realize. And then, depending on where you buy it again, if you invest in property back home, currency devaluation can wipe out all your gains. So people talk about, oh, I bought this house in Lekki 15 years ago. Now it's this million naira. Yes, but if you converted that naira to pounds, that 15 years ago that you bought it, and you convert the value of the property today to pounds, have you actually seen an increase? So that's something else you need to consider. And then the other bit is the fact that it's not liquid. You can't just wake up and move it. And you can't sell it in bits. So if I have 20k in shares, if I need 3k, I can sell 3k worth of shares and I have 3k. If I have a house that is worth 200k, I can't sell 3k worth of the house. The best I can do is either remortgage the entire thing or get a tenant. That's how I can take money out of the house. But I can't just say, oh, I need 3k now, which I've done recently. I needed 3k and I just sold some shares sharply, and I have 3k. But you can't do that with a house. So it's just good to be aware of all these things. One is not better than the other, so long as it aligns with your own personal strategy and approach. One thing I've come to learn is don't let anybody make you feel guilty about either I'm buying property or I'm not buying the cheapest property or I'm spending too much on property. You can't spend too much on something that meets your goals. If I'm buying this house because I like it and it is what I want, my personal view is money is made to be spent. You shouldn't feel guilty about that. It doesn't have to meet all the criteria. Just understand that it needs to meet your criteria, and your criteria should be defined by your purpose for that property. Is it an investment? Is it a purchase? If it's a purchase, then your criteria is different. Someone can come and tell you that, oh, you should have invested it in a particular way. If it is an investment, then your criteria is different as well. So your location might be different and all that. So you just need to understand that. Now, typically you have a few options to fund property in the UK if you want to buy property. Number one, it makes sense you take a loan, right? But how do you get the down payment for that loan? You could use a lifetime ISA. Actually, that's the best option in my view. Use a lifetime ISA. Unlike stocks and shares where you can put in your whole 20k allowance. For a lifetime ISA, the maximum you can contribute every year is £4,000. Whatever you contribute, whether it's 4,000, whether it's 1,000, the government adds 25% of it to that contribution. So if you contribute 4k, the government will add 1k on top. So at the end of the year, you end up with £5,000 in your lifetime ISA. Fantastic. Of course, once you've contributed that 4k, you still have 16k left for your stocks and shares. It's still there. Now, the condition that is attached to that 25% extra that they put in your lifetime ISA, and it's only lifetime ISA that has these features. The condition that is attached is you can only take that money out, the whole 4k plus 1k, you can only take it out for two purposes. One, to buy your first home. So if you already bought a home before, then you can't use your lifetime ISA to buy a home. It has to be for your first home. And then the second condition is, if you're not using it for a first home, then you can wait till you're age 50 to withdraw the money, which is also an option, because you could just decide, okay, you know what, this is 25% extra that I'm getting. I'll be putting 4k in this account. Government will be adding 1k on top, and I'll leave it there till I'm 50. When I'm 50, I'll collect all my contribution plus the 25% that government has put on top, plus the interest that I've made, the growth that I've made on that investment, because that's a guaranteed 25% growth on whatever you put into that account, plus whatever gain you make again. So imagine you put 4k every year. You start from age 30 and you put 4k in there every year for 20 years, right? So you put £80,000 in that place over the space of 20 years, and government would have added 25% on top. So you have £100,000 in that account guaranteed by the time you are 50. And that's not counting the growth from the investment itself, because you're not just putting that money in the savings account, you're investing it in stocks, in ETFs. You could invest it in savings as well, but if you are going to leave it there for 20 years, you might as well invest it in stocks. If we assume the stock market continues to grow at roughly 7%, that's 7% plus the 25% on top of your 80K that you've contributed over 10 years. That's a nice deal. So that's one way to use your LISA. If we come back to the property conversation, you can use that money. If you leave it there, you can use it to also buy property. Before the age of 50, you don't have to wait till 50 for property. Now, there's some conditions tied to the property. There've been a lot of feedback to the government about the conditions tied to a LISA, but as of today, the value of the property has to be either £450,000 or less. So if you're buying property in London, there are not a lot of places you can find that will be 450k or less. But that's the rule. If it's outside London, I'm sure you'll be able to get property that is 450k or less. So first property can't be more than £450,000 purchase price. And for you to even open a lifetime ISA in the first place, you must be under the age of 40. So if you're over 40, then I'm sorry, this whole conversation about LISA doesn't apply to you. Now, if you can't do LISA for whatever reason, or you don't want to use the LISA, there are other options like shared ownership, where you pay a lower amount as down payment, but there are conditions tied to it. The seller also still remains your landlord for a period of time. The way it works is typically you put down a proportion of the money for the property, and then the rest of it you pay over time as rent to the owner. So you have a mortgage that you are paying, and then you also have the rent that you are paying to the owner of the property. So it doesn't feel like it's a great deal. From what I've researched, the people that did it successfully and managed to step up were people that did it a long time ago. And then there was a period of time where the value of the property jumped and they were able to sell their stake and use that to pay. And then when you actually check YouTube videos, people that have done it, they will tell you it's just best for you to save up your own down payment, because in most cases you are buying something that you really cannot afford. That's why they are giving you all these other ways of paying the down payment. If you cannot raise between 15 and 25% of the value of the property you want to buy, then I personally would look somewhere else for property that you can at least raise 15 to 25% of it. The Help to Buy, where you pay 5% down payment, you end up being overstretched in paying the balance and managing it over time. So a few things for you to do. Decide, write it down. Why do I want to own property? Is it for investment or as a home to live in? Then write down your own criteria for the property you want to buy. Consider where you want to buy that property. Is it in the UK? Is it back home in Nigeria? Is it in your current city where you live in the UK, or is it outside that city somewhere else in the UK? Then when do you want to do it? Is it a long-term thing? Is it something you're looking at doing in the next 5 years, or is it something that you will do maybe later on when you're close to retiring? There's no right or wrong answer. You just need to make sure that you understand why you're doing what you're doing, because one thing you don't want is to rush into a property purchase without being clear on all these decisions, and then you start to regret it, because it is not something you can back out of in a hurry. You can't just buy property and then, I need to throw it up. I've seen videos of people that bought property and regretted it. And of course, I know people that own property in this London and are happy. So it's not a one size fits all. You just need to decide what works for you. If you have any questions, leave it in the comments as usual. We'll talk more about the mortgage side of things, specifically about credit scores. I'll see you then.